Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Open One podcast. And today, I've got two guests with me, and they're both good friends of mine, and we're working together on a project. And each of them has very interesting backgrounds, and the skill set that they've both acquired from their time working in the finance area and networking with business people and all that sort of stuff comes together really nicely for us on the awakening or in the awakening movement, because a lot of their skills transfer into being able to organize ourselves in an effective manner and use their own system against them. So we'll go for age before beauty. How's that? So Simon, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go ask Simone first there for a minute.
What are you?
So yeah, if
Yeah,
you'd
fire
like to
away,
just
man, fire away.
give a bit of an introduction to yourself and how you've got to where you are now.
Okie dokie. Right. Well, I look a lot older than I am. Back in '87, I joined Coots and Company, Bankers for the Queen. So I worked up in the investments department over in Lombard Street and used to walk around with the 18th century frock coat with the optional port bottle pocket in the back flap. Those were specially made for us as members of staff. And after a couple of years there, I realized that I wasn't really going to progress over at Coots and Company. So I left and I went into what I thought was mainstream banking, but actually was American retail finance and American retail banking. So in other words, it was kind of like the forerunners of the kind of open branches that you see nowadays, where the staff are quite sousy and try to flog you loans and this, that, and the other. Well, I was doing that back in 1989, unfortunately. And working for those kind of companies, it was high pressure. We had quite a few traders from London who got jobs with those kind of companies and then left because they couldn't take the pressure that they were being placed under. So it was really, I guess, with the benefit of hindsight, whilst I hated every minute of it, it was actually quite character building, because if you could tolerate the abuse that you got from your bosses, then you could pretty much tolerate anything. But there, I was basically given a grounding in lending. So I actually had a loan approval authority, ended up as a branch manager with various companies moving around the industry because it was quite incestuous. But I ended up being able to approve, what was it? I think it was 10 grand unsecured, 20 grand secured. But also what we would do is that, not only did you have to manage staff and the administrative function, but you had to manage the debt recovery function as well. So for my sins, I was known as quite an effective debt collector. And in fact, I picked up the names of Pitbull and Rottweiler from my bosses because I just wouldn't kind of let go of things, especially when it came down to either debt recovery or alternatively when it came down to protecting my team against the hierarchy of the bank. And of course, they didn't like that. When I left banking in, 2000, I ended up I took a little break and then came back in 2001 and went into mortgage broking. And having passed a 2-week test, I ended up as the head of operations or general manager of a company called Sterling Direct Finance, which was trading as easy loans. And it was one of these kind of ocean finance companies that you see, or you used to see at lunchtimes on the telly, advertising these secured loans. Well, I headed up one of these companies, and we were one of the top 10 companies in the UK, processed something like 300 applications a day for mortgage business. And after a couple of years, once I'd actually got the company into a position where it could be sold, and it was sold to London Scottish Bank, and it became London Scottish Broking. That's what the broking arm became. My boss financed me in my own venture, and I ended up setting up a couple of finance companies, a couple of mortgage broking companies. And they were doing okay until such time as the credit crunch hit and wiped me out. And I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do now? Because I had all this debt, all these credit cards where I'd been financing my companies. I had to let 15 or so staff go with one company, and I think it was about 6 or 7 with the other company. And I was up the creek, right up that famous creek without a paddle. What was I going to do? So hunting round, trying to find things to do, I tried to turn the company into a claims management company and started attacking PPI and unenforceable credit agreements. And I learned a little bit about that. But that led me on to money and the difference between money of substance, money of exchange, money of account. And that resonated with me in as much as I could tell in the pit of my gut there was something not right, but I couldn't quite grasp the importance of what I was looking at, right? And this was just an article about the difference. Money of substance being gold, money of exchange being paper, money of account being digits or something on a ledger. Anyhow, that led me on a path of kind of research, which eventually led me to some of the Winston Shrout seminars over in the UK. And in meeting people that had attended those seminars, I was eager to kind of share experiences and get into it and kind of bounce off of each other ideas and stuff like that. And so that's how the White Rabbit was born. And I ended up doing a few interviews on Ben Lowry show. I ended up traveling around helping people out, almost like that guy, that program with Michael Landis from Little House on the Prairie. And he made his follow-up series where he went around helping people. He was like an angel helping people. Well, that was kind of like me in a way, a mixture of that and The Littlest Hobo, those two series. and that was me really for a couple of years. And then I ended up rolling out seminars, and I started traveling up and down the country doing seminars in 2011. And that's when the YouTube channel hit the airwaves. And that was kind of it. From there, the rest was history, as it were. I just had a kind of massive following online, got involved in a whole manner of different kind of capers, in and out of court, barred from courts, escorted from the Bank of England, you name it, I kind of did it. Certainly had my phone tapped. I could hear the phone being tapped, definitely. Certainly had helicopters flying over the house every now and then, the old black helicopters. And I was kind of like, well, what's going on here? I must be quite famous in certain circles. I was certainly a kind of well-known celebrity on the court circuit, because whenever I went to court, the usher would bring people in and kind of point over to me and say, that's him over there, look, right? And that would happen quite frequently. But, I got to know the ushers, Karen and Tim, on a first name basis over at the court. In 2016, we created You and Your Cash as an effort to kind of turn White Rabbit into something which was more mainstream and presentable to the mainstream. And then, they've been running that for a fair old period of time until, of course, the young lady that you've got on the other side of this Zoom call came into my life around about January 2022. And of course, she then, made contact, wanted to kind of connect with regards to me coming to assist with and provide some educational materials over at ETP or Empower the People. And that was it. And as of kind of May through to July, that's where the negotiations took place. And we ended up teaming up. And obviously, it's now February 2023, and here we are, a kind of successful little team.
That's quite the background. Very grateful you're on our side.
I am on your side, yeah. Well, you've now got a ferocious debt collector on your side, sticking it to the banks, and they don't like it. In fact, I can tell you, I've actually appeared in a brochure for a well-known firm of solicitors, and they've actually taken my photo, my argument, some of my points that I make in some of my videos, and they use that to sell their services to banks.
Oh, nice.
To say that they can overcome what I'm saying, although they don't know everything I do.
All right, cool. Well, so Simone, could you tell us a bit about yourself and how you've got to where you are now?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you, Travis. It's always a joy to be on these types of calls with you. You're just such a delight. I really enjoy you. Well, I know that Simon's given you a run through from back in the 1980s. Well, 1987, whilst he was at the Bank of Coutts, Messrs, I was 3 years old. I wasn't, I hadn't even started school yet.
I think that's a lie. You weren't 3.
Well, 1984, I was born. So yeah, I was 3 years old whilst you was in your bank, learning all this stuff. And so my own journey has been quite later on. wasn't awake until 2020. I think a lot of people on your channel, Travis, and who you speak to, are pretty much in the same kind of position where they've come into this realization of what's really going on in the world. And that kind of compelled or propelled me into action. Okay, because to me, I love people, I love nature, I love this world, not in the sense of, oh, I want to cling to it, but in the sense that, you know, if you are righteous and you hold to certain moral standards, you're going to stand up when you know something's wrong. And so in wakening up in 2020, that's exactly what I did. I went on a path and a course of action, and that really hasn't stopped. Initially it was a very fast learning in terms of banking and law and what had gone on. And I'm so grateful that I have had experience in the business mountain, if you will, or in finance and in the corporate world. You know, that's my career was very much focused in the city. I was a fund manager. So I would maximize portfolios for investors. I mean, I had over £1 billion worth of assets under my management, and it was specialist assets. So I would build care homes, private doctors' surgeries, private hospitals, you name it, anything to do with healthcare, primary care and secondary care, I was very much involved with. And you know, that means that you get to deal with asset classes that are not standard commercial assets, which means you get to learn a lot of new, fresh techniques, which you can apply, like you say, to what we're doing now. You know, I would look at a piece of land for an investor or a client, or even when I was working client side, it would be our own land that we've bought, and I would turn nothing into something. I love creating something from nothing. To me, that is, you know, anybody can do it. We all have the ability to create, right? And so when you can draw upon inspiration in that way and create something of value for somebody else or even for wider communities, it was very rewarding. Of course, now I look back and I know that a lot of what we were pushing forward or building and developing out was very much for corporate interests, not for the people, but also it was helping to bring forward the 2021 and 2030 agendas, right? Because that's all about building smart cities, bringing in the technology. And when I would work with clients like local authorities and councils and housing associations, you know, they are looking at the designs of their buildings and the infrastructure that they're building, the high rise rabbit hutches, you know, because that's exactly what they are. They're just rabbit hutches, right? High rise rabbit hutches. They're building them in alignment with these corporate global agenda policies, right? These what do they call them? Sustainable development goals through the UN agenda, right? So when you realize that, you know, you don't want anything to do with it. You know, I just wanted to ditch the lot, and it was very difficult because I'm in a high paid job. You know, I've got lots of things to consider, like a mortgage and debt and all these other things that I'm tied to in their system, in their game, and you just don't know what to do. So it was a case of diving into the books, diving into the YouTube channels, diving into the articles, getting involved in communities, getting involved with some of the processes, trying to learn and acquire as much information as you can that's going to help assist you going forwards. And one of the, you know, things I'm really grateful for is that I do have an ability to pick things up really quickly. I've got a bit of a photographic memory, and so that makes things quite easy for me to digest and then go and teach or repeat to be able to teach somebody else. So I'm quite fortunate in that sense. And within sort of 2 or 3 months of waking up, it was almost like all those dots that I'd seen from a very young age that didn't make any sense now made sense, and I could just bring it all together, and it just made sense. So I met a few frogs along the way. I kissed a few frogs, fell into bed with people like, I use that term loosely, but, I connected to people like Steve Knight of Debtless and people like Ian Stamp of Matrix Freedom, as an example. And you quickly realize that these people are not for you. They're anything but for you. They are self-motivated. They've got self-interests, and their motivations are really skewed, and so to find in our movement, or even in the world, right? Because I think we've got to think about this in terms of the whole earth right now, in all countries, because we're all in this and we're all trying to do this. But there aren't that many who are credible, who are genuine, who are full of integrity and the right motivations and the right spirit. And to actually find people of good quality and good character and moral conscience is really tough. And so, when you come across people like Stamp and Steve Nye, and there's many others I could go on to, but this isn't a hate match, right? I'm just being real, that these people, whilst they might dangle a carrot and promise you freedom from the debt slave system and processes and ways to get out, or financial abundance, or whatever else they want to market to you, you quickly realize that these people are not there for your best interest, but also that their processes do not work. They've never made them work, and they're just using people as pawns to get back at a system that's already done them damage, which is actually, like I say, it's the wrong drivers, right? So that kind of all led me and inspired me to create what we now know as ETP, or Empower the People. And Simon, as he alluded to earlier, was one of those that stood out amongst the rest, heads and shoulders above everybody else in terms of his content, his knowledge, his experience, and where he's at spiritually, in his heart. What is the posture of his heart? And you've just heard him. He was flying around the country for many years trying to teach people this stuff on a shoestring with nothing, never asking for anything. And although we believe in equitable return and that there should be value given, value exchange, that's the basis on, what we should be operating on. People like Simon very rarely do. They actually don't. They would prefer to give their time for free, because they know people are struggling. And that's not to say that people shouldn't give in exchange, because they should if they can. And there's many ways to give, and I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but ETP is all about equity, being equitable with each other. And so there has to be some kind of exchange between us, and it could be that you're referring people to us, right? Because that's a form of exchange. That doesn't mean to say you're parting with any cash, if you're on a low income or on benefits, etc. But it's a way for you to give. Everybody can give something. And I look at Stamp, and I look at the Steve Knights, and I look at these other people, and they've never given anything to anyone. They don't stand at a march. They don't come and walk and go and visit Bill Gates's building with a crowd of people. They're not fighting for you. They're only interested in creating bigger pockets for their own gain. And that's the difference between what and why Simon's on board, and the difference between what I've seen out there.
Awesome. Yeah. And so that's quite a turnaround, because so you woke up in 2020, let's say, and then obviously you didn't mention Event 202, but that's wrapped up in it. But so it was about maybe a year and a half to 2 years after waking up that you first conceptualized Empower the People. Is that right? Is that about right?
I woke up in early 2020. And then by April, by sort of February, March, we'd launched Event 202. We were then going around the country, bringing everybody to Trafalgar Square and, you know, getting everybody en masse to do these marches by the late 2020. We'd started something called Lawful Observers. So we met Dave Eden, began to create a course that was designed to help people stand in their power against the police, because we were seeing people being attacked at these marches by the police and all this stuff. But at the same time as creating Lawful Observers, I'd alongside this created something called For the People, which was Empower the People in its embryonic stage. So I'd already created Empower the People by late 2020, early 21. I brought the domain Empowerthepeople.earth in January 2021, because after speaking to people and getting some feedback, it was just obvious that some changes need to be made. So Empower the People grew out of For the People at around 2020, 2021, but it didn't fully launch until March 21st, 2022.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, so if anyone's listening and they've just recently woke up, that's what you can get done in just a few short years. Obviously, in that time period, there's a lot of work and energy, and you've really got to have the gumption and drive to learn at such a quick speed. And but that's really quite a testament. There's very few people that I speak to in that period of time go from asleep to leading, basically. So that's really cool. And so something I'd like to get into from the both of you, because obviously Simon's working at Empower the People, but he has his own things that he's been going for some time. And I was curious, like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced from running an organization like this, or a movement, or how you'd like to term it?
You want to go, Simone, or shall I?
No, go on, you go.
Well, we can both chip it. We can both chip in, right? So look,
Yeah.
there's a number of issues, right? There's a number of obstacles. In fact, look, I tell you what, back in the corporate world, we used to perform what was called a SWOT analysis. Okay, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Well, you know, look, at the end of the day, a lot of these things actually mirror. You know, your strengths are actually your weakness as well, because it's people. All right, so you know, there are certain types of people who are prepared to stand up, right? And before you can run, you got to walk. But before you can walk, you got to stand. Okay. And there are a lot of people that will not stand up for themselves. They want someone else to do it for them. That presents a weakness. It's actually like walking around. For those that are prepared to stand and are prepared to walk and are prepared to run, they are effectively dragging the rest behind them like dead weight. Okay, holding them back. Okay, that's the best analogy I can create, or I can kind of explain. Alternatively, you can say that people are either drivers or passengers. You know, there are a lot of people. This comes down to this kind of 80-20 split, where, you know, 20% of the people are prepared, will generally, in any kind of given set or group, 20% of the people end up doing, you know, 80% of the work, and 80% of the people end up doing 20% of the work, or getting 20% of the results. And that's effectively what's going on here. And we could be so powerful if everybody just stood up for themselves, right, and said, and all you got to do is just say no. Right? That's where you start. It's like no, and hold your ground. And you know, and if people were to think about, you know, when they're involved in an argument with their other half, or their brother, or their sister, or something like that, and the kind of gumption and power that they would put into an argument, and the staying power, the stubbornness, all right, not backing down. If you just translate that to when you're dealing with your public servants who are telling you what to do, you know, like, since when does a servant tell the master what to do? If you apply the same line of thinking, the same stubbornness, well, then we could make a real difference. So, you know, look, so you've got that, you've got lethargy, and you've got the willingness of a vast number of people, the large number of people, to actually let someone else do it. Oh, someone else will do it. That's a problem. That's a threat. Okay, that's an obstruction to our success and our ultimate freedoms. But also, you've got these types who are out for themselves within the freedom movement, and those that are actually, by taking other people's hard graft and then quickly monetizing it for themselves, what some people are doing within the freedom movement is actually deterring really good researchers from coming forward with their research. Because if those that put in the graft and actually test things out to create solutions, if all they can expect is that some young upstart is going to come along with a bright idea of monetizing it, okay, without mentioning any names, and then these people just come and steal the ideas, steal the information, steal the solutions, and then try to monetize it, and probably don't do the job correctly. So they may take money off of people, but they don't actually deliver, because they can't deliver, because they don't understand it, because they haven't gone through the graft in order to get to the solutions. It's just like a kind of Jurassic Park scenario where, you know, when they came up with Jurassic Park, these weren't the scientists that had actually developed the technology. They weren't the people that put in the years of graft and research and testing. They were just someone that came along with boatloads of money, stole the tech, came up with a bright idea of let's bring dinosaurs back to life, and never gave a thought as to what would happen when they let dinosaurs loose in the realm of man. Well, this is the same kind of thing in the freedom movement, where you get people come along, they take these solutions, they roll them out, advertise them, market them, and what happens is that not only harms a lot of people, innocent people who think there's some great fandangled solution out there which is different from the norm, and people that are waking up into, you know, as to what's going on around them and looking for solutions, looking for help, but actually it also deters those that are actually genuine from putting their information out there, because they know, or at least they believe, that there's a fair chance that it's going to be abused. And so those people are also a massive threat and obstruction to the progression of the freedom movement and of the truth movement. And then finally, I guess, not wanting to dwell on the negative, so I've kind of come out with the kind of weaknesses, albeit the fact that people are the strength, right? The final weakness I would say is those who just they're the snowflakes. Unfortunately, there are some snowflakes around, and they're the people that kind of stamp their feet and demand that others do it for them for nothing.
Get easily offended.
Yeah, get easily offended, but they want it all done for them. They'll lay on their back, they'll put their legs in the air, and they want you to come and wipe their backside for them for free. Now, there are certain parties that would provide that for a service, wiping backsides, I'm sure, like that. But, you know, in essence, you know, we've got to support the people. If someone's prepared to help you and to maybe provide a service, you've got to understand that this is not the corporate world, right? This is just people trying to help people, trying to help their brothers and sisters, their spiritual brothers and sisters, okay? So don't expect for them to behave like, you know, British Telecom or Virgin Atlantic or Royal Bank of Scotland. That's not what it's about. But secondly, you can't just rock up, dump all your problems on someone and say, yes, right, it's really great that you're trying to help people. Here's all my problems, get on with it. And by the way, I'm not even gonna support you or help you or exchange. You know, I'm gonna go out and go to work, and I'm not changing any of my ways. I'm gonna go down the pub tonight and enjoy a good meal and a good beer with the lads while you're doing all my work for me. That is not right, and that's the wrong attitude. But as I say, generally speaking, beneath all of that, filtering its way and navigating its way through all of that crap, all of those problems, there is a kind of vein of genuinely spirited, warm-spirited people who get it, who understand that we've got to work together to make a change, to bring about a change, and that with change, this place could be, oh my God, this experience could be so much better for everybody. There's absolutely no need for poverty. There's no need for anyone to be feeling alone. There's no need for anyone to feel down, depressed, harmed. All right. Everything could be so much better and so different. In fact, so different, you can't potentially even imagine how it could be. It could really be like heaven on earth if, and only if, everyone embraced the fact that we don't need to be told what to do. by someone that is effectively undermining and perverting the role that they've agreed to take on for the benefit of the people. I'm talking about public servants predominantly here, okay, and those that run corporations. We don't need that. And we also don't need, I don't know if anyone's ever asked themselves the question, but we talk about the human race. Sorry, what's the race all about? And what do we get when we cross the finish line? Oh, sorry, is the finish line death? I mean, at the end of the day, why are we rushing around like worker bees or worker ants? I mean, are we in competition with those on planet Mars or planet Uranus, perhaps? I don't know, right? What's the game there? Surely we're here to all have an amazing, uplifting experience. And if not, well, why did I sign up to that then? No one showed me that at a soul level when I agreed to come here. No one showed me that actually what was on offer was a life imprisonment with hard labor.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, and perhaps in a bit later part of the show as well, that was one of my questions, was like just how good you think things could be here if we had a better system in place. But before we move into that, Simone, would you like to jump into some of your challenges that you've faced so far with ETP?
They're pretty similar in the sense that, what I find is that there aren't that many people who are willing to put their money where their mouth is. They they got mortgages or ties to the system, jobs, family that aren't awake yet, and all these things hold them back from actually being their best version of themselves. Because if you've got a mortgage over your head, then you can't lose your job, therefore you can't step out, or you might feel like you can't stand up and say something because you're fear of losing your job. If you lose your job, can't pay your mortgage. If you can't pay your mortgage, you lose your home, and it's a step like that, right? So what I find is that there's a lot of people meeting together, gathering together, doing some great initiatives, raising awareness, sharing leaflets and really good information, etc., etc. However, the infrastructure just isn't there because nobody's willing to invest in it and risk it for a biscuit, right? To put their own savings on the line, or to put their own property on the line, or to put their own family on the line, or whatever it is, right? There just isn't that many people who are willing to risk it. So the infrastructure that we need to develop in order to have our own systems in place for when there's crashes, or for when they try and force us into something we don't want to be in, just cannot be developed unless people are willing to risk it. And this is what ETP is about, hopefully showing the way how you don't need to have a lot of resources or funds behind you to get something like this off the ground. When we all come together, and the funds that ETP creates can go into delivering the infrastructure. Now we can sustain each other, we can give each other jobs, and we can start equipping our own communities. So that was one of the hurdles that I always experienced, is that people would talk a lot but wouldn't actually walk a lot. So there was that difficulty. But the other thing is, as well, it ties into what Simon was saying, and it's that when you do have others who are stealing and commercializing and just taking people's money and not thinking consciously about that man or woman's well-being, or where that course of action is going to lead them. Maybe perhaps they're not that experienced and they just want to seem like they're the guru of the time that we're in, but actually what they're doing is hurting people, because those people are losing their homes, or taking a course of action which leads to bankruptcy, or leads to this, that, and the other. And people like ETP, people like you and your cash, end up picking up the pieces. So actually, it's another drag on our resources. It's another drag, because not only does it tie us down, having to deal with these issues that have manifested because of the negligence of others and the ego of others, but it's stopping us from really moving forward with what we need to move forward with, right? So it's the hurting of our brethren. People aren't thinking about what that notice or that conditional acceptance, or that whatever it is that you're offering somebody, that promissory note to pay off your landlord or whatever, you don't know where that, if you don't know where that course of action could go to or lead to, you shouldn't be giving it to somebody. It's like giving a loaded gun to a baby, right? So that I would say that those are the difficulties that ETP is challenged with, actually being able to deliver on its objectives when we've got so much of this other stuff pulling us back all the time.
I was going to say, Simone, you actually had something which I didn't have in my time, because there weren't many people around. Early doors, when I first kind of woke up, as it were, to my knowledge, there were about 70 of us in the country that were aware of this stuff. So we were very isolated. So I never really had the problem in doing what I was doing. I was always very much like the Lone Ranger, as it were. Yes, we would come together maybe once or twice a year with various people around the country that were into the same kind of thing and touch base, and it'd be very community orientated. And it was like a weekend away, where we can share experiences and share ideas and stuff like that. But otherwise, you had to be very much self-sufficient. I was on my own, right? So, the Lone Ranger, that's it. Although he had Tonto, but I didn't have anyone.
You didn't have Zoom, did you? So
no, I didn't have any of this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not technologically minded, so I was very much, I could just do emails, and it took me a while. Anyone that's seen any of my videos on White Rabbit on YouTube, White Rabbit Trust, you'll see how the videos have progressed from absolutely appalling to absolute blockbusters nowadays. But it took a good few years to do that. But the point is, you had something, you had an additional problem, which was a problem I had in my corporate career, but it's not a problem that I had in this, which was you had staff. So you went for it big, and then you had staff. And of course, having staff brings an added problem, especially if the attitudes of those people is incorrect and is wrong. In other words, if the attitude of those people is still fixed in the old mindset, then they're going to treat that like the corporate world, where, I mean, I've described this in as much as, we're like, if you think of Star Wars, liken it to Star Wars, we're the Rebel Alliance, and we're operating on a shoestring, right? So we the weapons we've got is like we're armed with a ruler and a piece of blue tack, and there's the evil empire backed up by the bankers who can create money from nothing, and they've got every unique top of the range new fandangled weapon you can think of, right? And then we've got people who are saying, I don't really feel like it today. I feel a bit sick. I'm gonna take today off. Can you still pay me? And it's just like, look, hold on a second, right? What we actually require, what this movement requires, are people who are prepared through their willpower. Right? This is your willpower. You are willpower, right? That's what you are, right? You have willpower, or at least most people should have willpower. And through that will, through sheer will alone, you make things happen. That's where you don't necessarily need funds to do it. It's through sheer will. And by doing stuff, it attracts things to you, right?
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely, right? And, so, things, change can come. And if people really want it to happen, they have to get into the mindset that, it's not just going to happen to you. Yes, there are certain things you have to allow to happen to you. You want good things to come to you, and you allow them to happen to you. But otherwise, you've got to make it happen. You've got to actually start, splitting the waves in the universe and actually making it, driving your path and making things happen. There might be a place somewhere for like someone who's prepared to put in a few hours a day, right? I mean, if that's a good few hours a day, but there's no real place for those who are namby-pambying around. And actually what they really want is, again, revert back to my previous comment about snowflakes. Really, they're snowflakes. They want it all. They want to be basically claiming benefits. They just want someone to pay them, to show their face or maybe have their name on the door. They don't actually want to do anything, right? There's no place for those people. I'm sorry, right? They're passengers. They're at the top of the bus, at the back, and they're being driven around looking at the sights. That's what those people are. What we really require to people to come to the fore are those who are prepared to drive this and get involved, because it's only those people that are going to take us there.
It's interesting the similarities that you guys have highlighted in the challenges that you're facing, and how it ties into people, and essentially there is a small percentage of people doing a lot of the work and the rest of the people that aren't, but they're sort of still concerned or on our side, but So I was like wondering, what do you guys think? How do we get more of those people switched on, activated, motivated? How do we convert some of that percentage into actual drivers?
Well, I thought, sorry, Travis, I thought that ETP would be a vehicle to enable that, because the whole point was to give people the tools and the right tools, the right education to help them detangle from all the deceptive lies that they're entangled in, that stops them from being their full and authentic self, right? And walk in their destiny and the purpose that they've been born into this world for, right? The reason why they're being held back is because of the mortgage, because of the job and the reputation and what people think of them, which is all mental slavery. So ETP was all about, well, we can help you challenge the mortgage. We can help get rid of your unsecured debt. We can move you out from PAYE and working from an employer. We've got tools and strategies to help you get out of all of that so you can drive this forward. So you don't have to stand there and go, oh, I can't do that. What will my boss think? Or what will my no, don't we need people. I think Simon said this before, and I kind of agree with him. We need to go back to our savagery, right? We need to get that righteous, holy indignation from rising up on the inside of us to the point where it compels us into action. I always say love is not passive. Love is action. It's doing. It's if you love someone or something, you're going to move mountains for that one person, right? That man or woman, or for that thing, right? So that's the place we need to get to, where we love people and our world so much that we're willing to move into action for it.
Yeah,
Love
I,
that. And
I
Simon,
think
yeah.
I was going to say, if I can just add in there, I think what it all starts with one thing, right? With one thing. People have got to make the decision that they're going to do something. Okay, as I say, too many people are just sitting there, they're observing, I'll wait and see what happens over there before I make my decision. I know it's all bullshit, I can read that, yeah, I get it all, but I'm gonna wait and see what happens to those people over there. I'm gonna wait 3 or 4 years and wait and see what happens on that and this, that, and the other, and then I'll make my choice. And that's the problem. People are not prepared to make their own decision. I mean, I even years back, right, when I first got into this, and I was speaking to, funny enough, my old man, and I'm telling him about all this, and he says, so I'll wait for the government to come out and tell me what you're telling me. I just said, are you joking me? I said, they are the problem, right? They're part of the problem. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's woken up now. I mean, now he's constantly coming to me saying, have you seen it? I was just like, Dad, for Christ's sake, I know, right? Why are you telling me this stuff? I'm the one who told you years ago. You don't have to feed me all these videos and stuff like that. But that's the kind of mentality that we're dealing with here. So many people, no matter what their age, so many people are actually in bodies of varying ages, but actually they're little children inside, right? Now, don't get me wrong. On a consciousness level, look, we're all children, right? Mike, if you think about your kind of conscious, a lot of people out there would say, look, you know what, I still feel like I'm 16. Well, that's because your consciousness doesn't age. It can't get older, right? You're an eternal being inside this organic space machine or spaceship, which is your body, right, that you're controlling. But actually, you, the spirit or the consciousness within inside that body, inhabiting the body, that's why you don't feel like you get any older. It's because you're not. All that's happening is that you're getting you're getting wiser, or you should be getting wiser if you learn from the lessons that you're having, and if you learn from the things which are going wrong or have gone wrong in your life. Okay, because there's no such thing as failure. It's only success and learning experiences, right? So what you consider to be a failure is actually a learning experience. So all those learning experiences that we've had, as long as we pick up on those and we change what we're doing, well, then we become wiser as our bodies get older, right? As we move through the ages. But people have got to, it comes back to one thing. People have got to make the decision that they are going to act, that they are going to make the change, that they are going to do something. Otherwise, to go back to your original question, which is, how do we get people to actually do something? For a long, long time, I've kind of actually felt that, you know, we either have to wait for the 11th hour, which is what happens in all the films. You know, people only do something when they really, really have to, which would mean that only when people are kind of staring down the face of a barrel will they make the decision that they want to do something. And that might be too late, because it's not always a Hollywood movie outcome in the real world, right? In real life. So, you know, what I would say to people is this: is that if you leave this too late, it's not only your existence that's on the line, this is the existence of your kids, your grandkids, and your great grandkids that may never ever appear, because you couldn't be bothered to make a decision to stand up. Just want you to think about that. But don't worry, I'm standing up for your kids.
Yeah,
Even
we're
if
all
you
standing
can't be
up.
bothered to stand up for your kids.
Yeah, it's absolutely powerful, man. Okay, cool. So I was getting inspired actually a little while back, Simon. We were talking about how good it could be here, and I'd really like to get into that so we can give some inspiration for people, because it's not only this is all the bad stuff we're fighting against. It's like this is how good it could actually be. And there is something actually specifically, Simon, I'd like to get your thoughts on, because there is obviously the idea of a universal basic income, but then you've got what you've mentioned a few times about receiving dividends from, but that's from a kind of a different setup, right? So would you like to unpack like the differences between the two there?
Okay, well, look, well, one is contrived. So this universal credit system or whatever, that's actually under their control, where they want something in return, your enslavement. The other is actually based on your freedom. So look, we were all given dominion over the planet, right? So the first thing which is actually holding us back, if we think about our everyday lives right now, and we think of there's nurses protesting, they've been going on strike, they need more pay. And you've had, like, you know, what is it, the firemen want more pay, and then you've got the railway workers, they want more pay. There's been rail strikes, everyone wants more pay. Well, of course you do. Why? Well, because there's inflation and prices are going up, so you need more pay. Interest rates are going up, mortgages are going up, rents are going up, everything's getting more expensive. Of course you need more pay, right? It makes sense. But people are then striking. Well, look, what if I said to you that if we simply changed the monetary system and the way that the money is created, because I can tell you, it doesn't grow on trees. They literally create it on a keyboard, right? So it does get created out of thin air, as it were. It just gets created into existence. And that might sound crazy, all right? But if you don't believe me, anyone out there watching this, go to Google, punch into Google, I want a graph of the money supply and how it's increased from 1900s to present day. And you'll see it's a graph going up. So question, where did all the money come from? If there's a finite amount of money, where did it come from? How comes the graph is going up on the money supply? Well, that's because it's created from thin air. All right. Now, the problem is that creation is controlled. It's controlled, and it's a privilege which has been awarded to international private banking institutions, which then filter their way down into the high street banks that you see around you. All right. Now, I want you to try to imagine that creation of money, all right, was actually awarded to the government and not the banks. Because at the moment, if the government wants to pay the nurses extra money, the firemen, or wants to build hospitals, repair the roads and not have potholes, and do all these kind of wonderful things that they want to do, at the moment, what happens is the government has to borrow that money, which is created from nothing, from a private international bank or from the central bank, no, Bank of England over here on Blighty, okay, and then pay that back with interest, which means that you guys have to pay taxes. That's what your tax pays, allegedly. It doesn't, but I won't go into all of that right now, the entire mechanism. But in essence, your tax money pays back the banks, okay? It doesn't pay for the services, all right? But I'll come on to that at a later or different presentation, perhaps. The point is, the only reason you pay tax is because the government on your behalf agreed, right? Get this, they agreed on your behalf not to create money themselves, but to give the privilege to a private business which charges you interest. And therefore, because a private business is creating the money and charging interest on that creation, you have to pay taxes. Whereas the government could create the money for the people, by the people, of the people, and the people wouldn't have to pay it back to the people, which means no income tax whatsoever. But it also means that if the government controlled expenditure properly and didn't help themselves to huge salaries, pensions, this, that, and the other, if they controlled that properly, what that would mean is a number of things. Number one, there wouldn't be any strikes. There wouldn't be any underfunding. There wouldn't be nurses on poor pay. Everyone would be getting a proper salary. Those people that actually wanted to serve their fellow man would be getting a proper salary. All right. Now, we talk about those people that want to serve their fellow man as taking a step below man because they're in a service role. They're in a servant role, right? So all those people are operating in what we call the public domain. But you've also got some people that have got some great ideas. Building a railway. Wow, I would like to set up a company within the public realm, and I want to actually use that. I'd like to be rewarded for my great idea of enabling people to travel around quicker. But actually, what I'm prepared to do is, I'm happy to pay the taxes that all the train tickets create, all the revenue creates. I'll pay taxes, all right, and those taxes would go into the public pot. And all the other great ideas, I mean the great ideas, not the pollution ideas, not the ideas which cause people harm, not the ideas which damage the earth, but all the good ideas, right? And we all know what's good ideas, and we all know what are shit ideas, right? And damaging ideas. But all the good ideas would be approved by this thing called government, which is there to manage public services on behalf of the people, on behalf of man and woman. That's what government is there to do. That's what they're supposed to be doing. So while government's just approving licenses for these companies to be created to do all these good ideas, and it's managing public services for the people, the taxes which are collected from these private businesses delivering good ideas, those taxes would be distributed to the people. We have one share each. We have an equal share because we each are supposed to have dominion over the earth. We each own the earth. We each have sovereignty over the earth. And that's where your dividends would come from, which means you don't have to work, which means you have time to explore your consciousness, yourself, your own hobbies, whatever it is that you want to do. But in that kind of realm, where you've got somewhere to exist, because we've worked out with the land mass, everyone should have at least, I think it was everyone should have at least like something like 10 acres each. Okay, that's even if you divvied up between every member of every family, right? That's everyone should have ample land, right? Space. The reason people are under stress is because they're having to pay taxes, go to work. They're forced to live hand to mouth. They're living on top of each other, cramped.
Bad food,
squashed.
bad medicine.
But yeah, exactly. Bad food,
education.
bad water, bad air, bad education. All of that is creating pressures. And so relationships are actually pressured. And when you're under that, if you're put into a pressure cooker, do you think that every now and then a pressure cooker lets off steam? And that's what people do. Right? They explode and let off steam in some way, shape, or form, whether that's indulging in drugs, drink, violence, right? Whatever it is, they have to go and let off steam in some way, shape, or form, or escape from the pressure cage prison, the pressure prison that they've been put in by all of this stuff. And it could be so much different. The problem is a lot of people can't imagine that. And they seek permission for it to be different. They seek permission to be set free. It's almost like if you open up the barn door to hens that have been caged all their lives, they call those eggs that are produced by those hens, they say that they are free-range hens. And they say on the packet, chickens that are allowed to roam free. But you know what? When you open those doors to the barn, none of them leave. They look for permission to leave because they've been encaged and enslaved their entire lives. They can't envisage what's outside of that door. They just can't picture it.
Amazing, amazing. Well, hopefully we can leave some of the chickens out of the coop.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yes.
Snowflake-shaped ones.
Any more to add to that?
No, I think Simon's done an amazing job. We lived in a very warped reality. And if your people listening, your audience listening, wants to go and check out what Simon's saying, you know, we see these the control mechanisms and what they do in many scientific experiments. You know, he alluded to one with the chickens and the hens, but actually there's one online with the fleas, right? You put the fleas into the jar, you put the lid on the jar, you leave them there for 3 days undisturbed. When you come back, you open the lid and they will never jump higher than the lid, because they're now trained for life. But the most interesting thing is, Travis, when they start to procreate and have offspring, their offspring never go further than the ceiling either. And that is just how it will constantly be throughout those fleas' life. And that's effectively what it's mental slavery. And it is a lot of people seeking permission. And that is all drummed into us from school and then compounded through generations, right, of this top down enslavement.
Can I just say one thing for everyone out there that needs permission to think outside of the box, right? I hereby give you permission. And if you want, if you want someone to blame Spaniard.
Sorted. There we go. No excuse now.
Yeah, no excuses, people. That's it. You've been set free. You have total permission.
Not to cause harm, but to think outside of the box and to stand up for yourselves.
And to come into the real, true reality of who you are in this world, your purpose, you know, your destiny. It's way bigger than you've ever comprehended. You know, this is why the world sucks out of you, right? It wants to create zombified, non-thinking, non-critical thinkers, but we've got to turn it on our head and keep reminding each other that we are powerful, that we can affect change, that we can do things differently, that we can work together.
Well, you think chicken is the word that is synonymous with someone being afraid. They do want to create chickens, people that are afraid, right? Just stop being afraid. These people that are doing this to you, right, they are supposed to work for you. You know, years back, even before I understood the mechanisms at play and all the backhanders and the fraud and just the extent of it all, I knew that these guys worked for me. And boy, I can tell you, when something went wrong, someone would get it in the ear hole from me. And this was before I woke up, right? So I was never afraid to phone up and have a go and complain and give someone a good ticking off, right? To tell them to do their job. Because why? Because I am telling them to do their job and they work for me. And just getting that, you know, you don't have to try and take on the world or go to court or this, that, and the other, but you've got to start somewhere, right? And just adopting the mentality that these people work for you, or at least they should. And if they're not, why are you paying them? If they're not working for you, do you pay someone? I mean, look, if you guys out there pay people not to work for you, I'll leave my address at the end of this video, right?
Yes.
And you can send me funds to not work for you, if that's your thing, right? Now, I'm trying to make the point, right? Do it with humor, but I'm trying to make the point. Yeah. Just get into that mentality. The second thing is, right, you can start off very, very small in terms of putting your feelers out there and finding your inner power. And that is, right, this is your practice arena. Just start complaining when someone doesn't deliver. Okay. But at the end of the complaint, when you've put the phone down or you've finished the letter or whatever it is, and don't get abusive, be smart, right? There are some certain techniques you need to learn, and this is how you practice them. But once you've finished with that negativity, make sure you put the phone down and you laugh about it. Okay. You've got to get back into positive realms. All right. Because complaining can be negative, but there are some techniques that you can learn in order to complain. All right, which can actually be very kind of empowering. And when you complain, you make sure you demand damages. Actually, it can be quite profitable complaining, as I've proven in the past.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. So how can people get in touch with everything you amazing people are doing?
Simone?
Oh, well, you can visit our website, Empowerthepeople.earth. That's one way, and join up as a member. and come and join us at our weekly members meetings. We have an open space for all our members to come, and we have different breakout rooms with different topics of conversation to help members. We run multiple free training and education regularly, whether it's weekly or monthly. So there's many ways to get involved. We're also set up on a few social media channels. So we've got Telegram and YouTube, and I think TikTok and a few others. And you can, if people visit the website, there's the icons there, so they can actually click onto the links for those if they're interested. We're always putting out little snippets, and whether it's myself or Simon or other members of the team who are delivering some education, we always love to give fresh outlooks on these topic areas for people to engage with. We also, we've run a few workshops now around the country, and we've got a few more set up. We know that Zoom is valuable and it has its place, but it's not the be all and end all. To us, it's actually heart-to-heart connection. So we've created some events that we can actually go to where people can come and meet us in person, and some of the team, and actually get to know us a bit better. So if people go to the website, they'll be able to see those events and what we've got available. I'm not sure, is there anything else, Travis? I know we've set up a recent podcast that's just that's open for even members and non-members, right? So people can engage with that. That's on Spotify. It's called the People's Empowerment Podcast.
Yeah, you got that right.
Yeah, that's on Spotify and Deezer, and some of the other podcast channels, Apple, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots. Yeah, and of course, that Simon's got platforms as well to engage with. That very, what I love about mine and Simon's collaboration is that his is quite male. It's got quite a male spirit to it, or it's quite a male energy to it, whereas ETP is a bit of a feminine energy. And so what you get is this complementary synergy between you and your cash, White Rabbit, and ETP, I believe. So you can also check out Simon's style, which is different to ETP too, if it's too feminine for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where do we find your work, Simon?
Okay, well, look, over at I guess a lot of people like the YouTube channels, all right? So we've got White Rabbit Trust YouTube channel. That's probably the most well-known one. But there was also a You and Your Cash YouTube channel, but it's also youandyourcash.com, the website. So you're welcome to come there and knock yourselves out. We do have a lot of information that's available to you if you just visit the website. If you then want to get on the inside and start accessing some info on the private side of the site, that will cost you £5 to join. But that also means we can keep an eye on who's joining and make sure that certain parties are, shall we say, deterred from coming onto the website. And once you get in there, then you access a whole load more information, and you then gain access to what we call the toolbox, which is where you can attend seminars, webinars, and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. Look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Good. Thanks for your time, man.
Thank you, Travis. Bless you.